Welcome to Fantasy Football Today, Dynasty. I am your host, Heath Cummings, and today it's a one-man mailbag. I'm answering your questions from both contenders and rebuilders, and if your league is anything like mine, you may not know who the contenders or the rebuilders are. It seems like about 75% of teams are stuck in that 2 and 4 to 4 and 2 range. There's a few outliers, of course, but there's plenty of time, depending on when your trade deadline is, to just wait things out, see how things look, especially if you have a good team with a bad record or vice versa. I tweeted it out earlier this week. A lot of 1 and 4 and 0 and 5 teams just got their first wins last week. And I understand if you want to see if that's just a change in fortune or if it was just a 1-week blip. We have a very special email at the start of the show here. It's from good friend of the program, Tim. And he is sick of the dominant Dan talk. In the Baked Burger Dynasty League, Dan Schneider has named his team Dominant Dan. And apparently, according to Tim, on the most recent Beyond the Box Score pod, around the 30-minute mark, Dan made a few interesting claims. He said his roster is the result of drafting brilliance and superior skill. Tim says it was built on a shady Jalen Hurts deal that had to be adjusted after the fact. Dan said he's up 300 points on the next highest scoring team. Tim says the math says otherwise. I just checked, and Dan has scored 58 more points than Thomas Schaefer in that league. Point Tim. And most ridiculously, Dan claimed he will not lose another game all year. So Tim has offered a St. Jude bet to Dan and also called him Danny Boy, which is fantastic. I will update you guys when Dan responds. Did want to take a quick look, just kind of tell you guys how things are going in the dynasty leagues that you guys know about. So the Baked Burger Dynasty League, to give Dan some credit, he's 6-0. Thomas fell to 4-2 after my ridiculous team beat him this week. I'm 3-3. Adam is in the middle of a rebuild at 1-5. It's an interesting thing, though, because it's like a lot of the leagues that I'm talking about in the Baked Burger Dynasty League, there are now 5 teams, including myself and Jamie, sitting at 3-3. I play one of them each of the next 3 weeks. This is a really important time, both redraft and dynasty, where we're going to kind of separate the wheat from the chaff. So I'm looking forward to that. In the FFT Dynasty Superflex League, this is just a bit of a warning about how good teams can turn into bad teams. I've lost Tyreek Hill. I lost Brock Bowers. This past week, I lost Puka Nacua. I'm sitting at 3-3. Congratulations to Ryan Van Hoven, who is tied with Jamie in first place at 5-1. And to Dan's credit, he's also 4-2 in that league. And Dan's 3-3 in the YOLO League, which is his best record after 6 games yet. And he might be 4-2 if he'd remembered to set his lineup last week. No more shade at Dan. But one more email from Tim. I'd love to hear some analysis on the next FFT Dynasty about Jaxon Dart. Somehow, he has risen to QB 13 on Keep Trade Cut, 1 spot behind Baker, well above Ward, Penix, Trevor, McCarthy, Murray, etc. And this was actually sent before Dart's game on Thursday. So I think Dart may be top 12 by now. I mostly agree with Tim. I think, listen, we've been elevating Justin Fields. I shouldn't even say we. I have been elevating Justin Fields and Anthony Richardson because of what they do as rushers. And Jaxon Dart's run for at least 50 yards in his first 3 starts. That right there is going to get him a boost. I still think there's a little bit more risk than others do in his profile. So I've got him 1 spot behind Dak at QB 17. And if you were a contender, Dak's a top 10 guy for sure. I do have him behind Cam Ward still. I do have him behind Kyler Murray still. I do have him behind Stroud and Nick still. This will be a big, big week. A big week for Jaxon Dart, because the Denver Broncos have not allowed quarterbacks to throw very well. They've not allowed quarterbacks to rush very well. If Dart's good against this defense, he will be a top 12 dynasty quarterback in the consensus rankings, and it will be pretty difficult to argue with that. Our next email comes in from Ryan. And I think a lot of people are going to be able to sympathize with this. I have a dynasty team that is 1-4, but so unlucky. I have two 2026 firsts, but none in 27. It's a single QB league, and he's got Joe Burrow, ouch. But he had Caleb, so he's fine. He's got Jacobs, he's got Cook, he's got Swift, he's got Malik Neighbors, ouch. But then Brian Thomas, Rashee Rice, Ladd McConkey, Cortland Sutton, he has Bowers, ouch. But then Jake Ferguson. I don't know how you're 1-4, Ryan. You are extremely unlucky. He says, what do I do here? Do I just hope it gets better or try to sell off Sutton Jacobs to revamp for next year? If I have Rashee Rice coming back from injury, if I have Brock Bowers hopefully coming back, I think we should probably expect week 9, and I have that many good players around them, I am trying to push to contend until it's just obvious I can't. Now, if you get to 1-7 or 2-6 even, then maybe you just have to throw in the towel. But I think the hope is you get to week 9, all of a sudden you have Rashee Rice, you have Brock Bowers, you have all these other great players we've talked about, and you can go on a run. If I have a great team that's had bad luck or has injured players coming back, I am not giving up yet. Angelo is in a 12-team super flex, full PPR. I currently have 4 2027 first-round picks in a full rebuild. Would you trade one of those picks for TreVeyon Henderson? Oh, I drafted so much TreVeyon Henderson. It's hard for me to even think about acquiring more TreVeyon Henderson, but trying to put the hat on of a guy who didn't do what I did. I still have TreVeyon Henderson as my RB13 in Dynasty. I still think it's right there for him. He doesn't look to me like he's entirely certain as a rusher yet. A lot of times he gets the ball and it's just a little bit slower getting going than it should be, but that's not that uncommon for a rookie running back. Ramondre Stevenson has done nothing to keep Henderson off the field. I think we're just waiting for Henderson to settle in and show his true talent level in the NFL. I would give a 2027 first for TreVeyon Henderson. And even if I was in a full rebuild, and I'll just say that generally speaking, when I'm in a full rebuild, I'm not acquiring running backs. But Henderson, I think, is young enough that he can be one of those exceptions, especially if you think that by 2027, you're actually going to be competing. Henderson, I would expect in year 3, is going to help you out more than the rookie you can get with that pick. I would be looking at the teams that I think might be good in 2026 and trying to trade that one because I don't want to give up a top 3 pick for TreVeyon Henderson, but it's also mostly impossible to know this far out. One more email before our first break. What is fair trade value for Jake Ferguson? And is it even worth trading him with this run he's been on? How will that be affected the rest of the year? So I think I just saw the email from Jamie and I haven't done it yet, but we are ranking CeeDee Lamb as if he's going to come back this week. Jerry Jones said, I'm not a doctor, but I think it looks good for those guys. Speaking of Lamb and Kevontae Turpin. I think when Lamb comes back, Ferguson goes back to being somewhere in the tight end 8 through 12 range, and you've maybe got a 2 to 3 year window for that. I offered Adam Azer two second round picks in our Baked Burger Dynasty League. That's the league where I'm 3-3, right in the hunt, but not really that good. And Azer's sitting at 1-5 and definitely rebuilding. So I offered him 2 seconds for Jake Ferguson and Spencer Rattler. He said no, but can we just do a second for Ferguson? So I think a second is probably the range you're looking at. The problem is, if you're trying to acquire Ferguson, you've got to find a team that's not very good because they're probably not giving him up right now. And if they've had Jake Ferguson, they're probably good. This is a rare situation with Azer's team where Ferguson's been awesome. His team hasn't. And so I'd be willing to part with the second as a contender for Ferguson. And if I was in Azer's position, I'd definitely be willing to take a second if I was a rebuilder with Ferguson. We're going to take our first break. I see plenty of stuff in the chat. It's a lot harder when I'm reading emails to also keep up with what's going on in the chat. Joey Wright, thankfully, can confirm for us that Jerry Jones is not a doctor. Speaking of dynasty leagues I'm in the league that I think is actually called Joey Made Me Change the League Name. I'd like to know what the original league name was. Joey is in first place. He's absolutely dominant. He beat me earlier in the season. I have scored more points than him. I'm one spot behind in the standings. I'm looking forward to seeing him in the playoffs. But Joey Wright dominating the Joey made me change the league name Dynasty League. We're going to take a short break. Then I've got some tweets, and then we will get to your questions from the chat. So get those questions in there. We'll be right back.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you. When you need your sports in a snap, find it on CBS Sports HQ, streaming free anywhere you are.
Hey, here's a brag. The Rover man in the chat says, I've got Bucky and Benson out, Bowers as well, sitting at 4-2. That's a great place to be. And I'll just say, if you get a chance to go add Trey Benson to a contender, I do expect when he gets back from injury, and we think that will be less than a month, that he'll be the lead back there in Arizona again, and I think he'll be very good. Tweets we've got. Lately, we've seen a lot of players have a resurgence in their career. Do you have any idea who the next Darnold is? Or Javonte Dobbins type players we should keep an eye on to add to our bench or hold? What should we be looking for? Draft capital? I think at the quarterback position, that's probably the best answer. Those are the guys that are just going to continue to get a chance. There was somebody who evaluated them earlier in their career who thought they were really good. Let's see one more chance. I think the obvious answer coming into this year was going to be Trevor Lawrence was going to be that guy. Trevor Lawrence could still be that guy. He hasn't struggled for much longer than the guys you named. So maybe Lawrence. I think Bryce Young definitely fits into that category. Obviously, it's not going to be easy to find a lot of these guys, because if it was easy, they wouldn't have ever fallen off the radar like they did. Those would be the two that I would say. And then since you guys are not here in person and you can't throw things at me, I'd throw in Justin Fields and Anthony Richardson. Like, again, high draft capital guys with big upside. Maybe some coach can fix the things that are wrong with them. Their value certainly falling, though. And again, I have a lot of Justin Fields already, so probably not buying that guy. As for running backs, I think Trey Benson fits into that category. A guy that we were excited about when Connor got hurt, was a decent draft pick a couple of years ago. I think he's very talented. He hasn't done anything yet. May come back from the injury this year and not do much, but still be the starting running back for the Cardinals next year. And then I would just say the most likely running backs at this point are probably the rookies that haven't done anything yet, looking for older veterans. Maybe we get a situation where a Tyler Algier at some point gets a full-time role. Man, he's only averaging 3.5 yards per carry, but I could see some team handing him 15 carries at some point in the future. And is there one more running back looking through the dynasty rankings that you think could emerge? Man, I'm not ready to give up on Sean Tucker yet either. So maybe it takes until Sean Tucker gets to his second contract and has somebody else give him a chance. But those are some names of guys who haven't done much yet who I think could do it in the future. Quickster asks on Twitter, what's the best league rule or feature that we should add to our league next year? I've really enjoyed in the FFT Dynasty Superflex League having half PPR, half point per first down. Now, this is probably one that you have to do for a new league because it does alter the dynamics of running backs and wide receivers quite a bit. But it's just so much more important for an NFL team to pick up a first down than it is to catch a pass. So I think that should be rewarded at least as much as receptions. And I think the other thing comes from Mendel, and he says, have you tried Dynasty Best Ball? I'm in 18 standard Dynasty leagues. That's awesome. And added 5 Best Ball leagues this season. It's so much fun. And no lineup decisions is amazing. I have 2 Dynasty Best Ball teams right now. I'd like to add one next year, and I agree 100%. I absolutely love it. The thing I love the most about Best Ball in Dynasty is that a lot of times the way these leagues end up, and I talked about how everybody's 2-4, 3-3, or 4-2. That's not always as true in Dynasty because you've got some teams that are rebuilding that are trying to be over. We've got 3 of those, I think, in the YOLO League right now. And then you have these teams that have done such a good job that they have 4 starting running backs and 5 starting wide receivers, and it's a real pain deciding which of those guys to start. You really build more depth if you have a good dynasty team, and the best ball format allows you to benefit from that depth because the best guys just play every week. Mandela also said, I'd love to see Dan and Gibbs combine shows beyond the box score dynasty. Well, we had a mashup just about a month ago, so you should go check out that episode. And I fully anticipate when we get to the off season, I'm going to have those guys back on again. Dan may hear this episode and say he wants to come on just to refute what Tim said about him. So let's hope that happens. It would be a lot of fun. Ryan says, with dynasty mindset trending similar to redraft, who are some legitimate players who people should focus on when they're playing for the long term? And I do think it's a good point that as a society, not just a fantasy football world, as a society, it's become more what happened in the last 5 minutes. And that's not the best way to play dynasty. At the same time, as Sigmund Bloom said on this show a few months ago, changes do and value do happen really, really quickly. And so you're stuck in that. Do you want to adjust to how everyone else is valuing these players, or do you want to stick with guys who you believe in their abilities? I think when I look at the quarterback rankings, one of the first names I see who's experienced this is JJ McCarthy. After 2 games, we decided maybe they should just play Carson Wentz. I don't believe that at all. Still think JJ McCarthy could be very good. Still think JJ McCarthy is probably a very good buy low option right now. I think when you see these rookie running backs like a Woody Marks or an RJ Harvey have the spike week, and then they go back down the next week to their prior role, sometimes, well, in redraft for sure, like we're just out on those guys now, right? But for dynasty, it shouldn't affect it that much. In fact, it should probably be a positive because now we've seen the upside. We're just waiting for the opportunity. So I'd be looking for younger players who are having short-term problems, who we still believe in their ability. It happened with Harold Fannin for a couple of weeks, and we may get the Harold Fannin explosion. Yes, I found a way to work Harold Fannin into the show. Matthew Golden not getting as many touches as we'd like. Luther Burden finally at least led the team in receiving, although it wasn't very impressive. Hopefully Olamide Zaccheaus is going away soon. Like there's a lot of those types of guys, the younger guys who are struggling, but we don't really have any reason to give up on the talent yet. And that's where the dynasty game is so much different than redraft. Alan asks, what should I try to get for Cam Skattebo if I'm trying to win this year? Or do I just hold? And I don't think holding is the worst idea in the world. I would want a significant upgrade in terms of rest of season projection for me to trade away Cam Skattebo. I saw somebody sent Skattebo in a first for Jonathan Taylor. I love that, and that's the type of deal I'd be trying to make. Skattebo is currently my RB 17 in the dynasty rankings. I do think Kyron Williams is going to be quite a bit better. That won't surprise you guys. And he's really only 2 years older, so that might be a good angle to try to move. I think for Skattebo in a first for Taylor probably makes the most sense. Maybe a James Cook, who's just a couple years older. And then the one that, again, kind of like Ferguson, may not be available in your league because he may be winning too many games for his team, but Christian McCaffrey. We have no idea how many games of elite fantasy performance we get left from Christian McCaffrey. It could be the rest of this year. Maybe it goes into next year. Maybe we're one injury away from it just being completely over. But when he's healthy, he's probably 10 points per game better than Cam Skattebo. What would it cost you if you have a Christian McCaffrey fantasy manager who's been just destroyed by injuries everywhere else? Maybe see what it would cost to turn Skattebo into Christian McCaffrey. We had a few no-name tweets, and I knew their names, but I didn't know what they meant, and they weren't real people's names, and I didn't want to say something on the show that would get me in trouble. I didn't want to say something that would get Nada in trouble. Is JSN a top 3 dynasty wide receiver moving forward? I just updated my dynasty wide receiver rankings, and wouldn't you know it, JSN is currently wide receiver 3. Now, we've got a huge tier here with Puka And he's ahead of JSN for now. JSN, Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and CeeDee Lamb. I don't know that I'd want to make a strong bet on any of those guys in that group. And so if you could trade one of them for the other one plus, I would be willing to do that. But those are kind of the top 5 behind Jamar Chase. Again, it's Chase, Puka, JSN, Jefferson, Amon-Ra, CeeDee Lamb. And after last night, Drake London may be coming. Another no-name tweet. How are we feeling about Marvin Harrison Jr. in Dynasty? Once Petzig gets the axe, will he finally be a wide receiver 1? And this person thought that Harrison looks uninterested and slow on the field. I'm still pretty much all the way in on Marvin Harrison Jr. in Dynasty. He is my wide receiver 9. That's where he was last week. He's been in the top 10 ever since he was drafted. I am optimistic that when the offense changes, it will be better for Marvin Harrison Jr. Right now, he's kind of stuck in that even though he's a wide receiver 1, he's the number 2 option in his own offense because of Trey McBride. I think there's a lot of coordinators in the NFL that would be drawing up more targets for Marvin Harrison Jr. than they are for Trey McBride. That's just not the situation Harrison's in right now. Still a top 12 wide receiver. Probably a great buy low this week with people questioning whether the concussion is going to keep him out another week or not. And maybe you don't get the breakout this year. I still believe the breakout's coming. Is Zay Flowers worth holding on to anymore? Maybe snuck a redraft tweet in here. I feel he's all over the place. He is the type of player who is all over the place, partially because of the offense he's on. But I wouldn't be discouraged at all by the last couple of weeks with Cooper Rush. When Lamar Jackson gets back, I still think Zay Flowers is a number 2 wide receiver this year. He's still very young for Dynasty purposes. He's my wide receiver 19 in Dynasty. I think consensus has him closer to 25. So again, another guy that because of some inconsistency, because of some struggles, that you could consider adding to your Dynasty roster this week with Flowers on a bye and maybe somebody fighting for a playoff spot, and they just don't have the ability to add him. Let's see. We got a couple of questions here marked in the chat, and you still got time to get them in. So let's see. Mike says, any trends for home away teams' performances on Thursday night? I should have read that question before I clicked it, Mike, because I don't have any. I will say that I think the Thursday night thing hasn't seemed to be quite as true this year as it has in years past, but I would always lean a little bit towards the home team. And I would say that type of thing is generally reflected in the betting lines, which gets reflected in my touchdown projections. And that's about as far as I take it. I had a question from, I think it was from Twitter. It may have been from the emails, but again, it's Mike. And I think I have to answer it since 3 people have asked it now. Is Rico Dowdle now a proven starter rest of season? On the one hand, they love Chuba Hubbard. They extended Chuba Hubbard. He's a team leader. On the other hand, how do you not keep playing the guy who has 200 yards in back-to-back games? My expectation when Chuba Hubbard gets back, and I don't think they rush him back because why would you now? When Chuba Hubbard gets back, I think we probably see a 1 series for Hubbard, 1 series for Dowdle for at least a half. And if Dowdle's still doing this and Hubbard is producing 3.8 yards per carry, then I think it's Dowdle's job. As of right now, I still prefer Hubbard to Dowdle in Dynasty. He's got a little bit more security. Hubbard is down to RB 25 in my Dynasty running back rankings. Dowdle way up to RB 46. And it may be that I'm still a little bit too low on Rico Dowdle, but I just don't think they're going totally away from Chuba Hubbard. It's been a couple of really fantastic matchups for Dowdle. And so probably a sell high, in my opinion, more than someone I want to buy. We got a question about Rashee Rice. He's back. How great did it feel to look at your 2-4, 3-3, 4-2, maybe better team and slide Rashee Rice back into the starting lineup? He has moved up a little bit in my Dynasty wide receiver rankings, currently wide receiver 20, do think that he has the potential to go as high as 12. What I'm going to be very interested about, because this Chiefs offense is absolutely clicking on all cylinders. Does Marquise Brown go away? Does Tyquan Thornton completely disappear? Because they have so many weapons, by far, at least right now when they're all healthy, the deepest group of skill position players Patrick Mahomes has ever played with. And that makes it difficult to project Rice for the type of target share that he had the last time we saw him so awesome. Brown wasn't on the team then. Worthy was in his first couple of games in the NFL. If Rice comes back in week 7 and demands a 25% target share, you're going to see him skyrocket in both rest of season and dynasty rankings. For now, I'd probably view him as a wide receiver 2, both rest of season and for dynasty purposes. Looking at my most recent trade chart, so he's worth about 16 points. I might try to see if any of the, like if you have a disappointing rookie that you took later in rookie drafts, and see if somebody's still a believer in them. Otherwise, if you're talking about draft picks, you're going to have to give up more than a first for Rice. I'm not sure you'd have to give up 2 firsts, but a first and 2 seconds might get the deal done. That's kind of the range that I would be in terms of what I would pay for Rashee Rice. Let's see what else we got. And Joey says, yes, Thornton did sort of disappear on Sunday. I agree with that. It's just, is that a 1 week thing? Or do we see a moonshot to him against the Raiders this week? They do let some wide receivers go. DN says Rice is a lock for top 12. And if that's the case, then I think Patrick Mahomes may be a lock for QB1 rest of season. It seems like, and I might just ask you guys, because it seems like, based on the responses I'm seeing in the chat, and I'm seeing a bunch of them about the idea that Rashee Rice might not be a top 12 wide receiver. It seems like you guys are you concerned that Xavier Worthy just doesn't matter for fantasy? Do you think he's a wide receiver 3? Are we thinking that Travis Kelce is just going to completely disappear? He might. He wasn't doing much when Rice was on the field last year, but he's looked a little bit better the last couple of weeks than he did last year. I just think that we shouldn't be too certain about the way the Chiefs are going to distribute targets, partially because we don't know how teams are going to react to the Chiefs offense being back. If we get a bunch of shell coverage where everybody's just trying to take away these deep shots that Patrick Mahomes has suddenly taken, then yeah, I think you're probably right. Rashee Rice is a top 12 wide receiver. If he comes back and teams treat him like the number 1 and leave Kelce alone or leave Worthy alone, then I'm not sure that's the way it's going to be. Dan had a question about Woody Marks rest of season. Is he only the 3rd down guy, or do you think he'll soon take over for Chubb? Their comments did not make it sound like they think Woody Marks is a feature back in the NFL. The question is, can he see 4 targets per game and half of the running back carries? That's kind of what I would hope for, which probably, if he is efficient with those touches, and he's been fantastic in the passing game, that probably makes him something like RB 24-ish rest of season bet in terms of dynasty to have a role in the years moving forward. If they leave him in the current role, he's really not usable. He's just a bench stash. And the way they've talked, my other concern is if Nick Chubb goes down, is it Dameon Pierce getting half of those carries and Mark still doesn't become a feature back? I don't think he has the upside that it looked like he did in that one game, but that doesn't mean that he can't be someone that helps your fantasy team. I'm going to scroll through here and see. And we had this question earlier, but Mako, any advice for teams who are scoring points but losing games? Second in points scored, 2 and 4. Keep chugging along. You've mostly got to keep chugging along. I would say that if I have a 2 and 4 team like that is scoring points, I'm not selling. If I have a 2 and 4 team that's 10th in points, it's probably time to start the rebuild. So I do use points, but then also look at your team. I think it's really important to look at that bench right now and say, is there anybody here in the second half of the season that's going to make me better? Or do I just have kind of some roster cloggers and some guys that might be bye-week replacements? Because 2 and 4 with help coming is a much different thing than 2 and 4 with like nothing. And I've got a couple of those. Dan asks, will Burden work his way into the wide receiver 2 role on the Bears going forward? I mean, I'd like it if he could get to the wide receiver 3 role. He did show us something on Monday night, and he has unlimited opportunities, but he still played very, very little. We need to find out what's going on with DJ Moore, because he seemed fine after the game. He did spend the night in the hospital in Washington. We hope that he's okay. Maybe during the show, someone's already answered that question, you guys will tell me in the chat, but I think there's a chance he takes over for Olamide Zaccheaus, and Olamide Zaccheaus did just lead the team in target share for whatever reason. Looks like we are out of questions in the chat. I am out of Fantasy Football Today Dynasty for the day. Thank you guys for sending in your questions. Thanks for being active in the chat. Thank you to Nada for making everything work. We will talk to you next Tuesday.